Hi everyone and welcome to Bold and Tactical with me, Jessica Dickson. Today we're going to talk about how we can reduce silos within the purchasing organization. But before we start, I would kindly remind you of that my guest is not speaking on behalf of the employer she's currently working for, but from her own experiences and thoughts. So please keep that in mind while listening. And today's guest is nobody else than a fantastic woman who I had the opportunity to have as a mentor a few times. She has a broad experience within supply chain and of working with lean methods. She also enjoys working in an environment that is always changing and in need of continuously improvements. A warm welcome to Maria Rutholm.
Thank you very much, Jessica. It's really nice to be here.
Maria, I know you've been working within several global organizations like Tetra Pak and John Bean's Technologies, and you have quite impressive experience from positions like category manager, sourcing and purchasing manager, supply chain manager, and today you have chosen to work as a procurement manager for Sandvik. But why did you choose to work with supply chain in the first place?
Actually, I don't think that was not the plan. It's more like, as a person, I have a passion for people and development. And I got the opportunity to work with really great people, to work with lean methods and continuous improvements. So after that, I saw that this area is so fun and challenging. It also changes all the time and it needs continuously improvement. It never ends. So I believe that's why I'm still working within supply chain.
And today we're going to talk about how we can reduce silos within the purchasing organization. And silos is something you get in contact with when you're working with lean methods. But could you please explain for us more specific, what are silos?
Of course, I thought you should ask me that. So actually, I needed to find a description on the internet because I would like to be very clear about it. So what it says is, when a department or a management group don't share information, goals, tools, processes, resources and priorities with each other.
So how do you think it will affect the business if we aren't cooperating with each other?
Actually, I could say it's affect in many different levels or many different areas. But in general, I think the first thing is that the supplier, they could play us out within different departments if we are not work together. We could miss opportunities in cost savings because we don't share that information internally. I also think that it can get efficiency losses because we are sub-optimizing. It can also have the people working in an area feel insecure because they are not involved, we don't share information. And I also think that we would like to be an organization where people think we are professionals. But if we not cooperate and share information, the suppliers see that we are not working together. That is not to be professional.
Would you say that this is a common scenario within different purchasing organizations?
I would say it depends. I have seen it, I've been working within it. I also been at other places where it's not a problem.
If we feel like we have these challenges within our organizations, how can we then make our organizations more efficient?
I think there are many different ways of doing it, but it also depends on the size of the organization. I have mainly worked within a global organization where sometimes it can really take time to have decisions. Everybody is not on board all the time due to the size, the many people. But if you're working at a smaller company and you are probably the one doing everything by yourself, then it's very easy. You're on top of everything. And then you just need to be structured to do this. But I think all of it starts with the people.
So what do you mean when you're saying that everything starts with the people?
I think it's important to have people get together to build up trust.
So do you have any examples on how we can do that?
I think you can do like small things, lunches, common exercises outside office, meetings to get to know each other. But I also think it's important to bring in the total group together, not only the small group, but if you are different departments, bring them together, discuss the future and why we would like to change things. I mean, the positive effects of doing that, it's to cover what you have in the group, the knowledge, the willingness, and then you can start to set up the organization structure to support all these needs.
So what could a good working structure within a supply organization look like?
With my experience, I would suggest to create a commodity or a category management group that will support if you like to be effective when it comes to cost and quality. I also think that you can divide the areas within strategic, tactical and operational work. And if possible, it's really great if you can mirror this organization and be aligned to the engineering and R&D organization.
So how would you describe the strategic responsibilities?
The strategic, they are focusing, let's say, 5 years ahead. And the goal and targets is to set up the directions for the future. I believe they create and implement sourcing and supplier strategies. They scout for new suppliers, make selections and evaluations of the suppliers. Then, of course, negotiations and contracting, yearly, quarterly follow-ups that support the full organization. But I really like to bring up the importance to create a preferred supplier base, because if they can create that, you will reduce both cost and lead times, and you will improve efficiency and quality level. So it's really an important work, but you need to be ahead. You need to look for 4 or 5 years ahead. Where do we want to be in business in 5 years?
You were also mentioning the tactical one. Would you like to develop that?
Yeah, I mean, the strategic people are working 5 years ahead. And I think the tactic could be more like 2 or 3 years ahead. Work with continuously improvement projects, daily tools, support with taking care of tail suppliers or non-preferred suppliers, because that's an area who always comes in between and are forgotten. I also think it takes much time and effort in organization to drive all these improvements. So that could be something that is really important to have someone doing that. So if you drive that cost and you follow up possibilities for cost reductions, which could be a little bit strategic work, but still you don't have the time to do that for all suppliers. So the tactics should actually work somewhere between the strategic and the operational business to secure that we don't have a gap.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. And that leaves us with an operational purchaser that has more of a day-to-day responsibility.
Yeah, as an operational purchaser, you are really day-to-day. I mean, every order line is counting. So the responsibility there is to secure, to have the correct material in place in the correct time, to the right cost and with the correct quality every time. I also think that the operational purchaser has an important role to supply the strategic functions with the supplier performance by details.
Before we were talking about category groups, and I think I like that idea, but is there any disadvantage for an operational purchaser to work over several categories and with several different strategic functions?
No, I will not say that it doesn't work, but my experience says that I would prefer to have less people to collaborate with all the time, because it takes so much time. And you know, we have the same time all over, nobody has any left. So if you have one strategic person and you can put in an operational purchaser and they have the same category, they can work together all the time and they get to know more about the materials or the suppliers or the setup. Then you can be a pair and you can really make good work. But I will not say that it doesn't matter, because you can of course have several people as a purchaser and connect with all of them. But it takes a little bit more effort.
But the value added by creating category teams is to have short communication ways and to get to know each other well.
Yes, you need to create a team, and to be a really good team, then you share things, you support each other, and you have different knowledge and different skills. So I would actually like to have smaller number of people when it comes to that area.
Yeah, and then we get to the magic, right?
Yes, we do.
So if we get back to the supply organization, it is quite usual that the operational and the strategic persons have different managers. Do you think that will cause a hinder in reducing silos?
So now we're talking about to share information, to share the same goals, the processes, and work together. I think it depends mainly on the company culture and also of the managers. If the managers itself have a good cooperation, I don't see an issue at all. But if they are not talking to each other or working together and have the same manager, it could easily end up like one manager set up one goal, but that goal doesn't support the rest of the organization, and then you will end up with trouble. And to be really honest, I think when something happens within the company, you are taking care of your team and put your efforts there. So I really would suggest that to build up the organizational in a good structure, so you can use these possibilities to don't end up with silos between the different areas. There are too much silos anyway when you go outside supply chain area.
But at least you can reduce them within your own organization.
Yeah, absolutely, you can do it. As long as the people want to work together.
Yeah, I believe most people would like to work together, but it could be challenging to understand that their functions need and how you can support each other.
Yeah, but again, I would like to say it's coming from the top and bottom down. If you don't work together and share the information from the top management, it's really hard to bring it down and have all the other people trying to work together.
We have been talking a lot about how we can reduce silos between individuals, but I'm a bit curious about the mindset behind it. So where do I start if I want to go out and reduce silos within my organization tomorrow?
So Jessica, you should just be you.
Just be me.
I think it's important to be open, to be curious, ask a lot of questions, and also define what departments or which group are working with more or less the same as you. Do you have anything in common? Ask yourself, what can you support within the organization? And the last one, define what could you achieve if you start working together.
So do you have any practical tools for us that we can use?
Yeah, there is always one, which is important, and it's the communication. I think it's important to share information and to do it within the teams, within the company, but also towards the supplier. Then you have the same view of things. And it's more or less the same as we talked about goals before. It's really so important to have very clear goals, common goals, so you can set up directions together.
Yeah, the communication is a central key in reducing silos, but I was more thinking about practical tools that we can use in our everyday work.
So then I'm directly thinking about IT solutions. I mean, there are so many great systems where you can share information, like a supplier portal, which can be shared together with you and the suppliers and the team. You have Teams or Skype where you can have meetings. You can start improvement projects where you pick up people from different departments. That's a really, really great thing to do if you like to reduce silos. Because when you meet people, you get to know them, you understand what they are working with, and then suddenly you became a team.
Before this recording, we were talking about KPIs, and that's also a good way of keeping track of how you're doing against your goals.
Yeah, as a person, I really enjoy KPIs because what you measure will become better. But I also would like to see KPIs that are the same for an area. So if we're talking about a supply organization, you probably have the price, the delivery time, on-time delivery, quality and things like that as a clear target. But I believe everyone, no matter where you are in the organization, you can do more or less to really support these KPIs. So I believe it's important that we share them together.
Yeah, you were also talking about something called the flexibility KPI before, and that I find really interesting. Could you explain a little bit for us what is a flexibility KPI?
Flexibility, yeah, it's very flexible. I think when you're working in a manufacturing company, you are by default quite flexible in your production. So if we go out to the suppliers, we need to have suppliers that are flexible enough to fulfill our demands when it comes to delivery and to changes, because there are a lot of changes all the time. but it's a really hard measurement, because how should you measure it? Should you measure your demands only?
Yeah, that would actually be my next question. Is it really possible to measure this one?
I think you could add that as an add-on together with all the rest which you are measuring, the lead times that they fulfill what they actually have told you, and the outcome of the on-time delivery. Because if you have a good relation with the supplier, and this supplier is, I will not say big enough, but are the correct one for you, they will probably be able to always have some percentage as an overage where you can go in and change in their production plans and prioritize, so you can tell them, now we need this, and you can postpone the others. That kind of flexibility, I believe, more or less every company needs. But it's a really hard one, I know.
So if I understand you right, it's actually possible to measure these flexibility KPIs, but you have to measure it against the requested date.
Yeah, that's correct. But you need to be aware of flexibility is an extra cost. So don't do it every time if you don't need it.
Earlier we talked about what would happen or actually not happen if a strategic person has a meeting with a supplier without the input from the rest of the organization. So I would like to talk a little bit about the meeting structures. Who should drive it and who should be invited?
I believe that the one that is responsible for the supplier is the one who's driving it. I also believe that we might talking about quarterly meetings, for example. I believe you should have a common agenda for that. And then you invite the people that needs to be there depending on the area. But when it comes to the commercial part, I would like to see the operational buyer or the tactic together with the strategic person in the same meeting. I also expect that you have some projects ongoing, so you might need to bring in the engineers, maybe some supplier quality issues, so you need to bring in their people. But I would suggest that you can divide this meeting if you have the common agenda. If you start with something and then people can come and go depending on the needs.
So do you think that each person should drive their own subjects then?
When it comes to areas outside the commercial, I believe they should drive their own projects or issues or whatever it is. But you need to have one that take responsibility for everything, and that should be the one who is responsible for the supplier.
But what about the daily work? Isn't it reasonable if the operational person is talking about how they experience the work and are driving that kind of questions with the supplier?
Absolutely. I think that's one main reason why they should be there. I mean, they shall of course present the on-time delivery, the number of late deliveries, maybe if they have some issues in response time from the supplier or something else that comes to the daily business. They are the one knowing everything. But of course, one important thing is to be aligned before the meeting. So the responsible person, it could be the strategic part, knows about what will bring up. Otherwise, it could end up in a not so good situation. Yeah, that's true. But I really think that's the main thing why we should go there together is to be aligned from our company, because then it's much easier to drive improvements and to really have this supplier understand that this is for real. We are sitting here together, we are working together, and they cannot come up with different solutions or say, we have solved this before or something like that, because we are there all together and we will work as a team.
It's been a lot of questions today and the time is running out, but before this episode, I asked you to put together a few important things that you thought we should take with us in our work to reduce silos. So what do you have for us?
Okay, I have summarized a few points for you, and the most important ones are: set up an organizational structure, build a diverse team, work together, share information, define common goals and KPIs, be open, see the possibilities, and last but not least, have fun and start to work.
Maria, thank you so much for today. It's been really great to have you here, and we appreciate that you're sharing your knowledge with us. And guys out there, thank you everyone for listening to Bold and Tactical. We hope that you found this episode useful, and if you want to hear more from Bold and Tactical, please make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and following our LinkedIn page. If you have any question regarding this episode, you can always write them at our LinkedIn page and we will try to answer as many as possible. Until the next time, I wish you the best luck with your communication and the tools to reduce silos.